The story begins not with certainty, but with questions. Questions buried beneath the shimmering veil of the virtual world. In this age, countless souls are drawn into the embrace of virtual reality. Yet among the endless games, one stands supreme: Shangri-La Frontier. Its world is more than a playground, more than a battlefield. For a select few, it is a labyrinth of secrets. 3 core players hold the keys to its mysteries, though none truly understand the vastness of what lies before them. Now, Sunraku wanders in pursuit of something elusive, a magic operation unit. But he does not walk alone. With him are Emul Black and Aus, companions who carry their own shadows. Wrapped beneath a bedsheet to conceal their true forms, Black and Ami wait. At last, the veil is lifted. Raku grants them freedom, allowing their real forms to emerge, for no eyes watch this path. The trio steps into a place steeped in silence, the ruins of past glories. Ancient stone rises before them, relics of an age when divinity itself may have walked these halls. Raku gazes upon the vast remains and wonders, why was this built? And how could such a grand civilization vanish without a trace? Since meeting the professor, thoughts of hidden truths now gnaw at his mind. A flashback unfurls. Professor, the enigmatic leader of the Lore clan, had spoken to him. With a quiet urgency, the professor had pleaded, "Join us. Help uncover the truth of this world." Raku knew the weight of those words. Alone, the countless scenarios of Shangri-La Frontier could never be solved, especially not those entwined with the 7 colossi, the towering enigmas that shape the fate of this land. And so, with hesitation, yet resolve, Raku accepted the professor's hand of alliance. But mysteries only breed more mysteries. The professor had asked if Raku was ready to commit, to step beyond the role of a lone wanderer. Raku agreed, but revealed a name that shifted the air like a blade drawn in silence: Pencilgon. At that moment, unease crossed the professor's eyes. The name was whispered among players like a legend: the giant killer. Rumors told of dealings with the Schwarzwolf clan. Even the professor, unshaken leader of lore, seemed unsettled by the echo of Pencilgon's reputation. He left quickly after, leaving behind a silence that spoke more than words. And now, in the present, Raku stands among his companions in the ruins. He knows the professor's departure was no coincidence. The name Pencilgon carries weight enough to fracture alliances, to stir fear even in the strongest hearts. But for Raku, it means freedom, freedom to explore, to wield the treasures within his inventory, and to chase the mysteries of Shangri-La Frontier on his own terms. Black's voice carried a low unease as he murmured that the professor had almost uncovered them. Sunraku, however, did not appear shaken. He admitted calmly that the professor likely already sensed something concealed beneath his surface. The weight of his words startled both Aramis and Black, for Raku was not speaking of suspicion, he was speaking of certainty. The professor was no ordinary figure. As the leader of a lower clan, he possessed the sharp intuition of a man who had seen too much. Yet, Raku suspected that during their first meeting, the professor deliberately chose restraint, as if gauging him rather than exposing him outright. The thought lingered like a shadow. Why had the professor let him go? What game was he playing? But there was no time to dwell. Their journey had brought them deep into forbidden ground, the place that held the elusive magic operation unit. Here, the air was unnaturally heavy, as though the land itself resented their presence. Black warned that the real danger was not in what they sought, but in what lurked ceaselessly around them, the endless tide of golems. They were not lifeless constructs, but remnants of the time of divinity, guardians bound by something far older and darker than simple code. Without warning, one of the towering figures dropped from above, its stony mass quaking the ground. Its eyes burned faintly with forgotten light as it raised its arm and launched a brutal strike at Raku. He twisted aside with effortless precision, noting the creature's power but mocking its lack of speed. He dashed forward, preparing to strike, but before he could land a blow, Aramis surged ahead. His attack was overwhelming, a blast of raw force that shattered the golem in a single strike, reducing it to fractured stone and dust. The echoes of the impact lingered long after the pieces hit the ground. Raku crouched to search for any drops, only to find nothing. His tone carried mild reproach. Had Aramis's reckless strength destroyed the rewards? Aramis sheepishly admitted he might have gone too far. Before he could say say more, Black smacked him sharply, scolding him for unleashing a dragon killer technique on a mere fragment of divinity's leftovers. Aramis whimpered theatrically, clutching his head. Raku watched them with faint amusement, but his mind did not ease. For all Aramis's overwhelming strength, even as he spoke, the ground beneath Raku betrayed him. A golem formed from jagged stone emerged soundlessly, clinging to his foot. Its core pulsed with a dreadful light, swelling toward eruption. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if the explosion would consume them all, until Black's hammer swung down with crushing precision, sending the creature flying. The detonation that followed was enormous, lighting the cavern with a brief, blinding radiance. When the dust settled, silence pressed down on them, and in that silence, one truth became clear. What they had faced so far was only the surface. Somewhere deeper, hidden among shadows and stone, the real threat was waiting. Emul's voice trembled as he pointed ahead. Raku followed his gaze, only to witness something unnerving, an enormous golem's body splitting apart, releasing countless smaller ones that poured out like living shrapnel. The miniature constructs swarmed outward in all directions, their glowing eyes fixed on prey. They rushed close, each one detonating with violent bursts, the concussive shock forcing the party to scatter. Raku steadied himself amidst the chaos. His instincts whispered the truth. Fighting these endless fragments was meaningless. The true danger pulsed within the towering creature that continued to birth them. The source, destroy the source. Meanwhile, Emul and Aramis carved through wave after wave of smaller golems, yet the relentless tide pressed harder against them. Raku noticed the pattern. Their strength, their magic, their very presence marked them as greater threats. The swarms were drawn to them like moths to flame. That imbalance, however, could be turned into a weapon. If the lesser golems focused on Emul and Aramis, then he had a path forward. With a swift command, Raku launched Black onto his back, and together they darted through the swarm. Explosions flashed at his heels, but he pressed on, weaving between bursts of fire and rubble until the towering golem loomed above. Just as they prepared to strike, the monster leapt, slamming itself against a massive stone pillar. Aramis reacted first. With a precise chant, his magic carved through the air, striking the pillar. The ancient stone fractured, split down its center, and crumbled under the pressure. As it fell, the great golem launched itself higher, its shadow blotting out the fractured ceiling above. Raku's hand tightened around a blade unlike any other. He had claimed it long ago in a forgotten battle, its steel weathered by countless wars. Yet Black had reforged it, polished it until its surface gleamed with restrained menace. Now it was ready to taste blood again. He surged forward, placing himself beneath the golem's descending bulk. With a single, brutal swing, he split through layers of stone. Black struck then, her hammer smashing against the fragile heart, hurling it skyward. Raku's instincts screamed. He turned and fled. The blast shook the world, stone and fire ripping through the cavern. When the smoke cleared, they still stood, scarred but alive. From above, fragments of the golem rained down. Raku bent to retrieve one. His eyes narrowed as he read its details. A weapon, unlike any he expected, not a shard of stone, not enchanted armor, but a grenade, its surface humming with unfamiliar energy. Raku's blade tore through another massive golem, and the creature collapsed into fragments of stone and metal. From its remains, strange relics emerged, items unlike ordinary drops. Their surface glowed faintly, pulsing as though alive. Something about them felt wrong. The description gave no clue, only a vague line. Certain entities will be drawn to this material. Which entities, it did not say. In the silence after the fight, Aramis lightly rested her hand on Black's shoulder. Black's eyes narrowed, irritation flaring. With clenched fists, he brushed her off with a sharp glare. Aramis laughed nervously, muttering about not wanting her jaw broken, but the unease never left the group. They pressed deeper into the ruins. Black, scanning the shadows, spoke in a low tone to Sunraku. "The golems around here are all cleared. But if the unit we're seeking, the one tied to magic operations, really exists, it must be close." Sunraku paused, his gaze fixed on the shattered horizon of stone and rust. "I can't confirm," he admitted, "but this place, it's ancient, from the age of divinity itself. If it truly is a factory, then it would be heavily guarded." But they were not alone. From a distant vantage, hidden eyes tracked them. Pencilgon leaned against a jagged outcrop, smirking. Unaware of the hunters lurking in the shadows, Sunraku and the others stood at the mouth of the abyss, gazing into the underground world. Relief flickered in Sunraku's eyes at the sight, but it dissolved in an instant as the trap closed. A length of rope whipped out, catching him before he could flee. His body stiffened against the restraint, and the realization dawned that their appearance was no coincidence. They had been waiting, watching, following his trail with meticulous precision. The mistake had been his, small, careless, but damning. A shard of material he had stored had betrayed him, a traceable link to the one place such items could be found. From that moment, the hunters had known exactly where he would go. Black and Emul exchanged wary glances. These strangers were not chance wanderers but companions of Sunraku. Amid the tension, Sunraku's purpose remained unshaken. There was a broken machine, an ether reactor of a kind that did not belong in ordinary hands, and the only chance of repair lay in finding the elusive magic operation unit. All signs pointed to this abyss, the soundless void that swallowed iron and echoed back secrets. Without further hesitation, ropes were fastened, the coarse fibers straining against calloused hands. Ozo stepped forward, his figure outlined against the pit's gaping maw. The others watched as he began, his descent into the dark, the rope tightening and loosening in careful rhythm. After what felt like an eternity, Ozo's voice echoed up from the depths below, steady and reassuring, calling the others to descend. One by one they followed. A ripple of unease passed through the group, though some cloaked it in bravado. Steel gleamed as Aramis stepped forward, her sword blazing with confidence. She struck with all the force of her will, yet the golem's massive arm shifted, reshaping into an impenetrable shield that absorbed her assault with effortless grace. The sound reverberated across the chamber, a chilling reminder that this enemy was unlike any they had faced before. Black's expression darkened. He could sense it, the difference in this guardian's strength. For the first time since the Wolfgang clan had splintered, they stood united again. Raku surged forward, his moonblade cutting arcs of light through the darkness. His strike was cunning, a feint from the front that struck true from behind. The guardian staggered, its stone hide splintered, yet it did not falter. Raku climbed the walls with otherworldly swiftness, striking again. Ozo and Black closed in from either side, their combined assault forcing the behemoth back, pinning it to a narrow space where movement was its greatest weakness. Aramis and Emul seized the moment, channeling their power into a strike that cracked the guardian's chest. It was then that Pencilgon moved, his spear whistling through the air. The weapon found its mark, plunging into the fissure and tearing the guardian's strength apart from within. The golem collapsed, its massive frame crashing to the stone floor, silence settling over the chamber like a shroud. As the dust cleared, Raku and Pencilgon stood apart, their eyes meeting. It was in that quiet aftermath that a secret was revealed. The spear was no ordinary weapon. It was one of the 5 legendary hero arms hidden within Shangri-La Frontier, artifacts older than the game itself, each carrying a burden of power and mystery. The gate stood silent, vast and unyielding. Ozo, who had lingered here for what seemed like ages, prepared his skill, a craft not yet matured, trembling at its weakest stage. He pressed forward, and the moment his power touched the gate, a surge of violent energy lashed out. Sparks clawed at him. The others froze, uncertain whether to rush to his side or fear the gate itself. Raku's mind churned. He had expected the fallen golem to hold the key, the promise of progress locked within its corpse. But the truth was different. When Ozo, battered yet unbroken, forced the skill once more, the gate shuddered. With a groan like ancient stone awakening, it split open. The chamber beyond swallowed them in shadow. A sprawling laboratory stretched before their eyes, rows of broken machinery and forgotten relics cloaked in dust. The thought of treasure lit a greedy spark in Pencilgon's gaze, yet Raku's instinct coiled tighter with unease. When Raku's hand brushed against one, the dormant system came alive. A sharp hum rose and a spectral image unfurled into the air, the form of a beast, its features jagged and merciless. Upon its body glowed a mark, the unmistakable insignia of Omega, a symbol etched into the deadliest of weapons, the kind reserved for guardians of secrets too dangerous to reveal. The group exchanged glances, none willing to voice what the others already feared. The further they searched, the heavier the air became, as though the walls themselves remembered the ruin these monsters once brought. Black, steady, Ami, though uneasy, described the relic they sought, a magic operation unit, small enough to hold, yet powerful enough to warp the course of their journey. Still, the image of it was little more than a shadow in their minds. Emul, wandering too far, returned with a grin, balancing something precariously upon his head as if it were a toy. In the dim glow of the laboratory, it seemed ordinary. But when the light struck it, Black's breath faltered. The object, dismissed as harmless, was the very device they had been searching for. Raku did not hesitate. He swept Emul up, urging haste. The walls felt tighter now, as though the chamber itself sought to trap them. The discovery had been made, but danger was not far behind. With the magic operation unit in their grasp, they had only one thought: leave the accursed laboratory and reach Rabbit Zoo before whatever lurked in the hologram's shadow awoke for real. The silence of the chamber shattered when Pencilgon and Ozo suddenly seized Sunraku. Their grip was unyielding, as though they had been waiting for this moment all along, knowing with certainty that he would vanish at the first chance. Bound tightly, he found himself unable to move, Ozo's restraints ensuring that no escape was possible. The city's towering gates swallowed them as they entered. Crowds shifted and whispered, their eyes catching on Raku's strange attire. Ozo and Pencilgon mocked the image he cut, but beneath the surface, Raku carried the unease of a player who had too much to hide. Black and Ami soon departed with the magic operation unit toward Rabbit Soa, leaving Raku behind. Suspicion rooted itself deeper within him. He felt as though invisible snares were being drawn tight, waiting for the moment to spring. Emul remained by his side, though even that presence was called into question. Was it loyalty or another layer in a web he could not yet see? The air thickened when a presence emerged ahead. Analia stood in the distance, her clan at her back, their eyes blazing with intent. The moment her gaze locked upon Emul, she charged forward, her cries splitting the atmosphere. Chaos erupted. Panic clawed at Raku as Analia's group stormed toward them like predators closing in on prey. He tried to flee, instincts screaming at him to break free, but the hands of Pencilgon and Ozo seized him once more, dragging him into place. Helpless, he could only watch as Analia and her people descended upon them, the echo of their footsteps resounding like the approach of an inevitable storm. Raku's thoughts sharpened in the chaos. He remembered clearly, Analia's obsession was never with him, but with UL. Their fixation was singular, unshakable. Using that knowledge, Raku made his move. With a calculated gesture, he cast UL forward into their midst, and instantly, the hunters turned on one another, their struggle spiraling into a frantic contest to seize UL. Amid the clash, UL's voice rang with betrayal, yet Raku's resolve did not falter. He knew sacrifices were sometimes necessary to keep balance in a game that blurred the line between survival and ruin. But the tension only deepened. Pencilgon observed grimly, noting how impossible it was to steady Analia's fury without UL. A heavy silence fell as Sager 100 appeared, accompanied by Sager 0. The air shifted with their presence. Sager 100 introduced himself with quiet authority, the weight of a clan leader evident, while Sager 0 lingered at his side, her gaze fixed upon Raku with something more than recognition. Behind her screen name, Rei Saga, her admiration flickered, an unspoken truth that Raku could sense even without words. The tension mounted further when the professor arrived, his presence like a shadow cast across the gathering. Each player seemed to be carrying more secrets than the game itself could contain. Soon, the scene shifted. The disparate figures now gathered within the dim confines of a hotel room, their faces half lit, their intentions unreadable. Raku understood the weight pressing against him. They all expected answers. Pencilgon warned him that silence would only bind him to their pursuit. It was then Sager 100 cut through the suspense. He spoke plainly of his clan's true purpose, the hunt for a unique monster, Lycon the Night Slayer. His offer was heavy with temptation. In exchange for Raku's knowledge, he would reveal the way to sever the cursed mark of Lycon that clung to Raku's body. That mark, if lifted, would free him to don greater gear, to ascend further than his current bindings allowed. Sager 0 added to the revelation, her voice carrying both frustration and longing. Their clan's encounters with Lycon had ended only in tragedy. Fleeting battles, swift defeats, no lasting knowledge gleaned. They had glimpsed the abyss but never mapped it. Now, their eyes turned to Raku as the one who held pieces of the truth. Raku's mind churned. How much could he reveal? The scenario he had stumbled into was unique beyond measure, one no other soul in Shangri-La Frontier had even begun to touch. To speak too much might strip him of the one thing that set him apart. To say too little might turn all these hidden powers against him. And so, within the hush of the hotel room, surrounded by figures whose masks concealed more than faces, Raku stood at a precipice of choice. Every secret a weapon, every word a gamble. The debate hummed, but an older, quieter authority prevailed. When the professor raised an observation that made heads tilt, there were unique monsters, 7 in the catalog, whose names were already seeding panic in whispers. They were not simple beasts, they were epitaphs. First among them was Lycan, the Night Slayer, a black wolf that appeared without invitation, rumored to be female, a phantom at anyone's heels. The second was the catnet of the abyss, a thing of water and patient appetite. No player had ever caught a proper glance. Its existence came as a warning only from a nervous NPC. Third, Sig VM, the Sky Ruler, whose domain was the high blue where no sword could reach. It swept down like a verdict from altitude. Fourth, the Orchestra of the Doom Echo, whose lore was a torn page found in a raided royal library. Its music could twist nature into tsunami, fire, lightning, a symphony of annihilation. Fifth was Ermin, the Tomb Guard, already inked into their memories because Raku and his companions had faced and felled it. What they'd learned was a sliver of what it truly was. Pencilgon, as always, dealt in artifacts and paper as much as in bullets. He produced an item called the Tomb of Truth, a ledger, a codex written with the dry arrogance of someone who knew secrets were currency. It claimed to hold the buried mechanics of Ermin, the Tomb Guard, useful, delicate knowledge that could tilt a fight from chance to plan. The book's value was not merely informational, it was leverage. Pencilgon wanted payment. The professor drew a hand and the offer became a transaction rather than a negotiation. Money changed places, an ordinary exchange made strange by the thing being bought, a map of how a monster thinks in order to be unmade. Sager 100, pragmatic and blunt, reminded them why Raku's presence mattered. They needed data, anything to turn myth into threat assessment. Raku was singled out, not for heroics but for utility. He held scraps of first-hand memory about Lycan. He told what he could. Details were blunt. Information like that shifted the room's temperature. Where rumors had been clouds, those specifics were sharp ice. Knowing the jaw's lethality did not make it less deadly. By evening's end, the plan was no more a single line than it had been at dawn. It had fan-outs and contingencies, a lattice of what-ifs. Pencilgon's book had been bought, its pages promised facts and folly in equal measure. When they returned to the city, the streets carried a quiet unease. Emul's gaze lingered with doubt, but Raku's steps carried no hesitation. His next path was not meant to be shared. The city faded behind him as he slipped back into the wilderness, the weight of his solitary journey pressing upon him like the promise of a storm. The land of the crystal scorpion loomed ahead, jagged and cold, its atmosphere brittle as if fractured by countless unseen eyes. Raku entered without fear, whispering only to himself the certainty that death would not claim him here. The beast would be the one to fall. He cast a stone into the emptiness and the silence shattered. The first scorpion emerged, its body gleaming with crystalline menace, followed by others, their claws striking the ground in an unholy rhythm. The swarm multiplied until the land itself seemed to writhe with their presence. Raku ran, each step deliberate, his mind fixed on a single thought: gravity. The swarm gave chase, their razor limbs scraping like echoes of doom. Yet Raku's plan unfolded with chilling precision. He leapt across a pit, the ground vanishing beneath him, and the scorpions surged blindly after him. Momentum betrayed them. One by one, their gleaming bodies tumbled into the abyss. But victory was not without peril. Raku too was caught in the fall, the air rushing past him as the scorpions clawed through the void. A strike lunged for him mid-air, its crystalline claw inches away. In that suspended instant, something impossible awakened. The world bent to his will as he stepped upward, not on stone or soil, but on the air itself. The Skywalker skill ignited, granting him a second leap, where none should exist. His body soared upward, evading the deadly strike as the swarm crashed into darkness below. Suspended above the abyss, Raku hovered, the silence of the battlefield broken only by the echoes of countless creatures meeting their end. The world seemed to hold its breath. Victory was his, but the shadows whispered that greater trials awaited. The dagger pierced the stone wall, and his body clung to it like a shadow. For a fleeting moment, victory seemed certain. The swarm of crystal scorpions had fallen in one swift maneuver, their bodies scattered in glittering fragments. The cliffside echoed with the silence of conquest, and yet something was wrong. No surge of power coursed through him. No light of growth flickered within. His experience remained still, untouched, as if the battle had never ended. A chilling thought coiled in his mind. Perhaps it had not. Perhaps something yet stirred in the darkness. The answer revealed itself with a trembling in the ground. A lone survivor crept toward him, but before it could reach him, it convulsed, split apart, and fell lifeless. From its shattered remains emerged a presence that froze the night, the golden scorpion. Its massive frame glistened under the pale moon, its armor radiating a brilliance that mocked the fallen swarm. It slaughtered its own kind as if they were mere insects, discarding their lives with terrifying indifference. The hunter had become the hunted. The golden beast surged forward, its movement singular, not the mindless assault of the others. Its focus was absolute, its intent sharpened to a blade aimed at him alone. The cliff's strategy would not work here. This was no ordinary foe. Poison flashed through the air as its deadly stinger lashed toward him. He evaded, barely, the venom hissing as it corroded the stone. The scorpion did not relent, striking again and again, its rhythm impossible to predict. Each dodge drained his breath, each movement demanded clarity, yet his body trembled under the weight of fear. For a moment, the temptation to vanish into his inventory whispered to him like a siren, but pride smothered the thought. Such cowardice would be unworthy of a gamer. Another strike. Venom swept across him like a tide, and this time there was no room to escape. Only instinct saved him, forcing him into the void of the inventory at the last possible second. He emerged shaken, his pulse unsteady, the knowledge sinking deep. Without that refuge, death was inevitable. But fear alone could not win. His eyes searched the beast's crystalline body and caught the faintest fracture, a weakness hidden within the golden armor. The plan formed. Swiftly, he leapt, weapons shifting in his hands, their cursed edges dripping with decay. Poison against poison, the gamble of a desperate mind. The blades struck true, carving into the exposed gap, and for the first time, the monster recoiled. Yet triumph was fleeting. With an otherworldly bound, the golden colossus ascended to the cliff's summit. There it spread its claws wide, the moon bathing its form in silver fire. Light poured over its wound, sealing it shut as though time itself obeyed its command. The sight was overwhelming, not just strength, but regeneration. An enemy that defied the very rules of battle. Before him stood not a beast, but a titan, a colossus woven from nightmare and glory. And still, within his chest, fear tangled with exhilaration. For this was Shangri-La Frontier, a world of gods and monsters, and he had stepped into the realm where legends were carved. The clash echoed beneath the pale glow of the moon as Sunraku's blade struck once more at the narrow fault within the golden scorpion's armor. He retreated just as quickly, restoring himself with practiced precision, though his thoughts lingered on a strange revelation. There was something unnatural in the way the beast recovered. Its carapace shimmered not only with resilience but with a quiet resonance to the moonlight above. Could it be that the creature's life was tethered to the moon itself? The memory of Una surfaced, how even her path seemed tied to the moon. Was this more than coincidence? Was the moon not simply a backdrop, but a force hidden within Shangri-La Frontier's design? A key to mysteries unspoken? The golden scorpion lunged again, relentless, its claws striking with venomous intent. Sunraku knew he could not allow it to restore itself endlessly. He cut into its armor again, but this time, his blade cracked under the force. The sharp sound carried a warning. It was the cost of pushing against something beyond natural strength. He thought of Ermin, the tomb guard, and realized this battle rivaled even that encounter. There was no space left for hesitation. Every fragment of his being, every skill, every gamble must be placed on this fight. With the surge of his boundless massacre skill, he carved through the air, unleashing a storm of slashes. But the scorpion countered with poison. a haze of corruption spilling across the ground. He barely escaped through teleportation into his inventory, his lungs burning with the thought of what would have happened if he lingered. Yet unlike before, he returned swiftly, standing before the creature again as though tethered by unseen compulsion. The golden scorpion's wound closed in the silvered light above, but Sunraku's counter was merciless. A blade flew from his hand and embedded itself deep within the monster's eye. Then, with a burst of skill, he propelled himself upward and drove his fist into the lodged weapon, forcing it deeper until the creature staggered. The earth trembled beneath its weight. Sunraku summoned his twin moon blades, merging them into one colossal weapon, a blade reflecting the very light that sustained the scorpion. From high above, he descended like judgment itself, striking its massive dung. The impact shattered the carapace, splintering power across the battlefield. He clutched the fragment as it fell, storing it away, but the victory was short-lived. The scorpion's rage erupted. Energy coursed from its body, a storm of fury more primal than before. Then came the swarm. Crystal scorpions, countless in number, crawled forth from the shadows, encircling him. Yet what seemed a death sentence sparked revelation. He remembered their hostility, the day he had first witnessed the golden scorpion's wrath against its lesser kin. They were not allies, they were adversaries. If drawn together, their enmity would consume them all. With cunning precision, Sunraku maneuvered among them, skating across the battlefield, striking once more into the golden scorpion's other eye. His form vanished into inventory space. Breath ragged, exhilaration still trembling in his bones, Raku staggered back toward the city. Dawn's faint glow touched the horizon as exhaustion pressed heavily upon him. Yet thoughts of others crept in. Black, and whether she had already ascended to the rank of ancient craftsman, her skill needed to restore the fractured ether reactor. At last, he reached the meeting point where UL awaited, their path winding toward Rabbit Zoo. But elsewhere, another story stirred. Black's hands trembled with excitement, not from fatigue, but from revelation. The golden scorpion's den, something she had only dreamed of glimpsing, now lay within her grasp because of Raku's conquest. Yet behind her exhilaration was something unspoken, as though she sensed that this victory carried threads of fate that neither of them could yet unravel. Shangri-La Frontier shifted again, the game revealing itself less as a battlefield and more as a labyrinth of mysteries waiting to be unearthed. When Sunraku handed over the spoils of his latest conquest, the atmosphere shifted. The items taken from the black golden scorpion shimmered faintly, but it was the core that unsettled the room. The moment Sunraku revealed it, Black froze. A scream tore from him, raw and piercing. Not of pain, but of recognition and disbelief, as if some forgotten truth had clawed its way back to life before his eyes. Raku pressed the core into Black's hand, his tone laced with irony. The prize was not what had been asked for, a fragment of a crystal scorpion, but something infinitely rarer, infinitely more dangerous. Emul reached out, almost childlike, to take another item from Raku, smiling at its strange beauty, yet her joy shattered instantly when she learned what it truly was: waste, the grotesque remnant of the creatures they hunted. The levity vanished, leaving behind only unease. Raku's voice grew heavy as he confessed the torment he had endured in obtaining the golden scorpion's core. With his mana depleted, the journey had been nothing short of torture, forcing him to sprint through relentless waves of crystal scorpions, unable even to retreat into the safety of his inventory. Exhaustion, desperation, and survival had been his only companions. He turned back to Black, questioning the progress of his transformation into an ancient craftsman. Silence answered him. Once, twice, thrice he asked, but there was no response. The stillness thickened until Raku felt the creeping dread that Black had perished. His voice rose, panic clawing at his throat. And then, without warning, a sharp crack split the tension, Black's hand striking him down. He was not dead, only paralyzed in shock, unable to comprehend that he now held the golden scorpion's core, an artifact belonging to an age long buried in divine history. Black's voice trembled with newfound certainty as he declared himself reborn as an ancient craftsman, one capable of restoring relics from the age of gods. His first act was to mend Raku's unstable ether reactor. Power surged back into Raku, exhilaration flooding his veins. With this, the forbidden armor within his inventory could, finally, be his. But when he rushed to claim it, something in Black's expression betrayed unease. The armor was more than it appeared, strange, almost hostile. Raku's excitement faltered as he remembered the mark etched into his body, the curse of Lagon. That shadow, that binding, made the armor, forever, out of reach. No matter how many times he tried, every piece rejected him, as though the curse itself mocked his ambition. Frustration twisted within him, the knowledge that others, Oka and Pencilgon, might be able to wield what he could not gnawed at his pride. The curse denied him, yet it did not deny them. In the flickering haze of his thoughts, Raku reached his decision. He would vanish from them, conceal the truth, and guard the armor in secrecy, for without his reactor, none could hope to claim it. His resolve, however, drew only a dark laugh from Black. To him, Raku's cunning was not strength. It was cruelty, a deception born of selfishness. And in that dim light, trust began to fracture, replaced by the lingering weight of secrets, curses, and an armor that refused its master. Emul's voice lingered like a faint echo, trembling with unease as he pleaded for Sunraku's swift return. Yet Sunraku's reply carried a shadowed weight, confessing that only when his unsettled mind found balance would he come back. The scene faded, pulling away from the shimmering expanse of Shangri-La Frontier, dissolving into the still silence of the real world. Outside, twilight wrapped the streets in quiet mystery. Rei Saiga, better known as the elusive Saga Zero in the game, wandered aimlessly, her steps drawing her past Sunraku's home. Without warning, she stopped, her gaze pulled upward toward a single glowing window. Something about it seemed to beckon her, yet as she stared, she felt the strange, unshakable sensation of being watched. 3 children stood in the shadows, their eyes fixed on her with an uncanny intensity. Flustered, Rei's composure broke. She turned abruptly and fled, her retreat almost too sudden, as though she feared what those eyes truly saw. Somewhere else, her avatar, Oitomi, had also disconnected from Shangri-La Frontier. Yet unease followed her even offline. Oitomi's expression darkened, heavy with frustration. She complained, endlessly, about her lack of armor, obsessing over it as though stripped of more than just protection but identity itself. Her younger sister tried to lighten the air with casual words, drawing a strange comparison. What if someone longed for clothes they saved tirelessly to buy, only to learn the clothes were meant for children? Wouldn't they simply discard the thought and move on? That small spark of reasoning ignited something inside Oitomi, as if an answer had been waiting beneath the surface. She, suddenly, exclaimed with renewed determination, but her cry startled her sister, spilling juice across her clothes. Oitomi's lips curled into a wry smile as she mocked her sister's earlier words, reminding her to simply wear something else and forget about it. Yet beneath the teasing, an idea, dark and luminous, was already forming. Meanwhile, far from this exchange, Sunraku sought refuge not in silence, but in another world, entirely. He descended into the metallic abyss of Nephilim Hollow, a game unlike the chaotic trash heaps he usually prowled. Here, colossal machines towered like titans, each one a vessel for human ambition, rage, and willpower. Players did not merely pilot them, they became them, reshaping steel and circuits as though bending destiny itself. Sunraku settled into his mech, recalling the bitter memory of his last clash with the reigning champion. That battle had ended not in victory, nor in defeat, but in an unsettling stalemate that haunted him. As the machine's systems roared to life, a shadow emerged before him. A name rang out in the hollowed arena, Super Ballman. His words were sharp, tinged with obsession, as he declared himself Sunraku's eternal nemesis. Yet Sunraku's memory faltered. He could not place this challenger, as though Ballman had been erased from his mind as easily as a minor nuisance. The realization stung the rival, who revealed himself to be none other than the number 2. Ranked player, his pride tethered tightly to Sunraku's recognition. Accepting the duel, Sunraku slid into readiness, his eyes sharp with a quiet hunger to test his rusted reflexes. The battlefield lit up as Super Ballman unleashed a barrage of searing lasers, the brilliance splitting the darkness. But Sunraku's mech moved like a phantom, weaving effortlessly through every strike. Shock spread across Ballman's face as he realized the machine before him had been modified, reborn into something unnaturally swift, yet perfection bore its own curse. The speed was otherworldly, but fleeting. Sunraku knew it. Somewhere, deep in the whirring heart of his mech, a hidden timer had already begun its silent countdown. The mystery was no longer who would win the battle, but whether Sunraku could end it before the machine's heart burned itself out. For 3 long minutes, the arena pulsed with silence and tension, broken only by the echo of steel against steel. Then, like a sudden storm, Sunraku lunged at the towering figure of Super Ballman. Yet his strikes fell hollow. Hesitation betrayed him, his practice insufficient for the precision required. In that instant, Super Ballman retaliated with a crushing blow, slamming Sunraku beneath the weight of the battlefield's shifting carpet. The air grew heavy. Super Ballman's voice rolled through the chamber, deep and ominous, as if every word carried the chill of inevitability. He commended Sunraku for shattering his laser at the crucial moment, yet with cruel finality declared that Sunraku's wings were already broken. Beneath the crushing pressure, Raku's thoughts swirled darkly. He understood the flaw of his own construct. One wound to the machine, and its entire form trembled with weakness. "Come out," Super Ballman taunted, pacing the ground above. "No rug of shadows will conceal you. Forever. I will end you here." The air quivered as the giant surged forward, intent on finishing what he had begun. But a hidden brilliance sparked from beneath the carpet, Sunraku's laser cutting through the gloom like a secret arrow. The beam lanced upward, yet Super Ballman slipped aside with uncanny ease, unshaken, his eyes gleaming with confidence. Suddenly, Raku erupted from his concealment, soaring high above the arena. His enemy mirrored the ascent, both titans suspended in the air for a fleeting heartbeat, each carrying the weight of destiny. From below, Raku's voice carried like an incantation, a whisper of truth woven into mystery. He accused Super Ballman of mistaking Malawa for an enemy, a miscalculation fatal enough to crack his composure. In that sliver of confusion, Sunraku unleashed his strike, a blazing laser that carved through his opponent's defenses. Super Ballman faltered, his colossal form trembling before crumbling into defeat. Victory sang through Raku's veins as he stepped free of his battered machine, his face lit with the thrill of survival and triumph. But the shadow of resentment lingered. Super Ballman, broken but unyielding, spat out his anger. "This is not fair. You must rematch me. I will not rest until I am the first to claim victory over Rust, the untouchable #1. The air shifted, and then he appeared. Rust himself, stepping into the arena like a phantom recalled from memory. His voice, calm yet commanding, silenced the noise. The first battle was over. Now it was his turn. Raku's heart stirred with recognition. A forgotten memory flickered. The last time they fought, a match that ended in a draw against the one no one else could topple. The strongest player of Nephilim Hollow, Rust. The recollection washed over him, a vision of Rust's crimson twin wing glimmering beneath dim light, and of Mordo, his assistant, rushing breathlessly with news that Sunraku still fought even now. That moment of excitement, of hunger for battle, returned full force. Back in the present, Rust's eyes locked on Raku with dangerous resolve. He demanded an answer to the question that had haunted him. Why had Raku abandoned their battlefield after such a clash? But Raku only shrugged the weight of history aside, dismissing it with reckless indifference. Perhaps he had simply wandered into lesser games, trash distractions unworthy of his skill. The answer stung Rust like poison. Fury flickered in his eyes, for to him, this world was sacred. And so, the gauntlet was cast. Rust challenged him once more, and Sunraku, driven by pride and instinct, repaired his machine for the coming storm. Around them, the arena shifted. The defeated Super Ballman vanished to the audience, where countless eyes now burned with anticipation. Among them, Mordo waited, his gaze locked not on Rust but on the unfolding story, the inevitable collision of two legends whose rivalry promised to shake Nephilim Hollow to its core. The air trembled with anticipation as the match was announced. Sunraku versus Rust. The arena erupted in deafening cheers, the crowd's energy swelling like a storm. Rust moved first, slipping behind his opponent with predator's precision, his intent sharp and merciless. Yet Sunraku did not falter. Shots rang out, streaks of light cutting across the field as he fired back, each movement calculated, every step a desperate dance to outpace Rust's relentless assault. The clash unfolded like a duel fated long before this moment. Bullets and blades, swiftness and strength, each canceling the other out in a strange, violent harmony. From the stands, the Super Ball man watched with narrowed eyes, his thoughts sinking deeper than the surface spectacle. Rust's dominance was undeniable, his skill honed to a razor's edge. To even dream of defeating him seemed laughable. Yet a whisper stirred inside the Super Ball man's mind, a promise to himself. One day, somehow, he would stand above Rust. Until then, the one closest to breaking Rust's iron grip on victory was Sunraku. As the battle reached its crescendo, Sunraku drew his sword, its edge glinting with a final chance. Rust mirrored the gesture, and the two surged forward like mirrored reflections destined to collide. The clash lasted only a heartbeat. Rust's strike tore through with effortless brutality, shattering Sunraku's attempt and leaving him broken on the ground. The match was decided in an instant. The crowd erupted again, but this time the cries carried both awe and unease. Rust stood victorious, yet his fury lingered, directed not at triumph, but at Sunraku's perceived weakness. He demanded to know how such an easy strike could end a fight. To him, this was not worthy of the battlefield. Sunraku, drained and sitting upon the cold ground, offered only a weary truth. 3 months in the game had sharpened his resolve, but not yet his control. His hands, his timing, they were still imperfect tools. Rust, dissatisfied, pressed for a rematch. Sunraku declined, and the refusal lit fire to Rust's rage. He shouted, his voice carrying like thunder through the arena, drawing the eyes of every spectator. It was Mordo who stepped forward, his voice calm, an anchor to the chaos. He urged restraint, warning Rust of the eyes upon them. For a moment, the storm seemed contained, yet Rust's blade betrayed the illusion. In a sudden, violent motion, he plunged it into Mordo's stomach, silencing him with cold steel. The crowd gasped in horror, uncertainty rippling through the ranks of players. But even through this, Sunraku did not waver. He rose with quiet determination, declaring that tomorrow would bring their rematch. The words carried through the air, sparking a new kind of electricity among the onlookers, a thrill at the promise of what was to come. When Rust departed, Sunraku remained, lost in thought. He had noticed something troubling. Rust's robot, unchanged since 3 months prior, was the same machine that had crushed him before. No upgrades, no replacements. The Super Ball man explained the truth. Rust would not alter his Titan until the day someone finally defeated him. And so far, no challenger had succeeded. Resolute, Sunraku vowed to continue playing, to rise until the day he could break Rust's reign. The Super Ball man, with a glint of secrecy in his eyes, offered him a bargain. Fight him again, and he would reveal the hidden truth of Rust's power. And then, as if the world itself shifted, the scene bled into shadowed memory. Whispers of the past filled the screen. The Nephilim Hollow, titans from the sky, vast and merciless, had once descended upon the earth, tearing it apart until humanity bled. To survive, humans had seized forbidden power, technology that allowed them to command the very titans they once feared. Now, in the present, the world of play was layered with hidden truths. The robots the players wielded were not mere machines but echoes of those ancient titans, and atop a towering building beneath the endless night, Sunraku and the Super Ball man sat in silence, watching as the colossal beings descended once more. Among them moved a shape unlike any other, a titan, unknown, unfamiliar, and shrouded in mystery. Sunraku's eyes fixed upon it, his breath caught in his throat. Whatever it was not meant to be seen. And yet, it was there, waiting, as if calling only to him. In the aftermath of the latest update, whispers spread through the digital frontier, rumors of new machines, half forgotten and abandoned by most players. Super Ball man explained them with a wary tone. Experimental robots birthed by the patch, endowed with unique abilities but riddled with fatal flaws. One dared to wield them. No one, except Sunraku. To Raku, their obscurity was an opportunity. If no one used them, then then no one truly knew their secrets. He saw not failure, but potential. With swift precision, he dismantled two titans in combat, their hulking forms collapsing into the dust. A third, however, he did not destroy. He captured it, as though sensing that its dormant mystery held the key to something greater. The scene shifted to the shadows of the black market, where flickering neon cast uneasy light over rows of mechanical parts. Here, Raku and Super Ballman bartered for fragments, wires, plating, circuits, pieces that would give form to his strange new vision. Yet, the air was thick with hostility. Two players stepped from the crowd, warning Raku to challenge the roost and leave. Confused, Raku questioned their motives. Super Ballman, lowering his voice, explained the truth. It wasn't hatred of the roost that drove them, but reverence. The community respected it too much to see it fall, yet they hungered for a new spectacle, to witness it tested against a rival worthy of its legend. As they moved deeper into the market, Super Ballman posed a quiet question. Had Raku discovered how to defeat the roost? Raku's response was measured, almost cryptic. Victory would not come through raw control of the game. The roost's strength lay in its unseen ally, Modo, the ever-watchful system that read his movements and whispered counters. And yet, even as he spoke, Raku's eyes fixed on a set of obscure parts. He bought them without hesitation. His idea had taken form, though none could yet discern its shape. The day of the duel arrived. Anticipation hung heavy, the crowd restless with expectation. MODO-2 stood ready to monitor every motion, every anomaly. Yet the challenger was absent until, at last, Raku emerged, piloting a machine unlike any seen before. Its name he revealed with a smirk, Fiddler Crab. The players murmured, uncertain whether to laugh or marvel. MODO-2 studied the strange design. Confused, why craft something so unconventional, so vulnerable? There was a hidden layer here, but it refused to reveal itself. The battle commenced. As before, Raku slipped away from the roost's attacks, firing in response. Modo-2 felt the shift first. It was too deliberate, too deceptive. Raku vanished from sight, disappearing into thin air. The crowd gasped. Super Ballman, however, muttered that such a skill was nearly obsolete. Players had abandoned it long ago, knowing its flaw. The user's rocket boosters could not be hidden, leaving faint trails that betrayed their position. The roost tracked those faint signs easily. With every angle of dust, every glint of a thruster, he anticipated Raku's position. Yet as his strike fell, something broke the pattern. There were no boosters, no trail, only silence. Modo's voice cut sharp through the tension. Something was wrong, and before the roost could react, Raku was there, impossibly close. The claw of the fiddler crab tore through, severing a hand and a wing in a single motion. Shock rippled through the crowd. The roost demanded an explanation, but only Modo unearthed the truth. Raku had twisted the rules of the update, replacing his legs with anti-gravity units. Forgotten by all, dismissed as useless, they had granted him a silent approach. But at a price, the legs consumed vast energy, their burden slowing the user to a crawl in prolonged combat. It was a desperate gamble, a weapon no one dared employ. For the first time, the roost felt the weight of uncertainty. Raku had taken what was discarded and turned it into a weapon. Mystery lingered in the silence that followed. How many more forgotten flaws and abandoned scraps had Sunraku already gathered in secret? Raku vanished into thin air, his presence dissolving into silence that unsettled even the most hardened players. Mordo, overwhelmed by the flood of sudden revelations, strained to hold his composure. He warned Rust of the danger, that Raku's invisibility would, eventually, drain his energy and his form would reappear, exposing him to attack. Yet Rust, driven by instinct rather than caution, leapt boldly from the building and landed on the battlefield below, her choice sealing her path. Invisible but ever watchful, Raku studied her. He had anticipated her recklessness, knowing she would refuse the safer route. Rust, however, remained unshaken, waiting for the inevitable moment when invisibility would falter. And when Raku emerged in mid-strike, she seized the opportunity, her blade flashing, severing the very hand that gripped his main weapon. The crowd erupted, stunned by the precision of her counter. But beneath the roar of excitement, Raku remained composed. Even as his weapon hand was lost, he claimed victory in another way. He had maneuvered her, exactly where he wanted, into the trap he had prepared. Mordo, sensing the setup, cried out for Rust to retreat, but it was too late. The trap snapped shut. Rust stood defiant, accusing Raku of underestimating her resolve. Super Bowl Man, watching from the sidelines, recalled the cryptic words Raku had once spoken, that his trump card alone would determine the outcome against Rust. He remembered too the flaw Rust carried. Her speed was unmatched, but her boosters were her anchor, and the destruction of even one could dictate her movement. In the present, Rust narrowly avoided the snare, only to find Raku confronting her directly. The battle escalated when Raku revealed the hidden strength of his machine. The top of his robot shed like a husk, revealing twin cores, a concealed weapon of overwhelming power. Shock silenced the spectators before awe returned. The clash between the two machines shook the arena. Blades carved steel, metal shrieked, sparks painted the air in streaks of fire. The fight pressed both combatants beyond their limits. Raku's relentless strikes carved through Rust's defenses, while Rust's blade penetrated deep into Raku's frame. In the end, the inevitable collapse came. Rust's robot lay in ruin, destroyed under the weight of the clash. Raku stood victorious. The spectators erupted with exhilaration, eager now to witness Rust's return with a new machine. Yet amid their cheers, Rust's pride burned. She declared that their rivalry was unfinished, their victories balanced by a win, a loss, and a draw. Only one more fight would settle the score. Raku, however, dismissed the notion. His purpose here had been fulfilled. He was ready to return to his true game. Rust's fury flared. How could he abandon this battlefield now? But Raku revealed that his presence here was only a reprieve, a diversion from the greater game of Shangri-La Frontier. His words drew suspicion, for in that world, Rust had never seen machines such as these. The revelation opened a door. Rust pressed him for answers, suggesting a bargain. Information for information, she would share secrets of a unique monster known as Net of the Abyss if Raku revealed what he knew of the robots hidden in the frontier. Together with Mordo, they retreated to a secluded rooftop away from prying eyes to whisper of forbidden knowledge. Mordo laid the foundation of their offer, describing a unique scenario. Pierce, the disciple of the Abyss. They had failed to complete it, for Rust had lost interest when she discovered no trace of robotic constructs within it. Yet the very mention of such a scenario unsettled Raku, for if even the professor knew nothing of this path, how could these two players possess knowledge of it? Doubt crept into him like a shadow, and he withheld his trust. He reminded them that the technology he wielded was not his alone, but shared among others whose permission he required. Rust interpreted his hesitation as a demand to speak first, but the truth was more elusive. In that moment, the balance of power shifted again, not on the battlefield, but in secrets whispered between them. For in Shangri-La Frontier, victory was not always written in the clash of steel, but in the veiled knowledge of what lay hidden beyond the abyss. Raku stood in silence, his mind weighing the fragments of information that had just been laid before him. There was truth in what he had discovered, but also a hidden flaw buried deep within. The path called X was not just another scenario. It was a bridge leading directly to a unique monster, one tied to the elusive Pierce, the disciple of the Abyss. Had they conquered Pierce, the gates to the X scenario would have opened before them. Resolve settled in Raku's chest. He would not let this chance slip away and resolved to lend his strength to completing what had been left unfinished. The idea seemed to stir something in Mordo, who felt a sense of grim satisfaction at the prospect. The fifth town would become their meeting ground, the crucible where threads of fate began to weave together. Rust, however, carried another weight. He questioned the future of Raku's path, wondering if his rival would continue with Nephilim Hollow Sun or abandon it for something greater. But Raku's determination was like a shadow carved into stone. He would not let go so easily. A quiet understanding passed between them, one built on unspoken rivalry. Then came the revelation that shifted everything. Rust, who had once vowed not to create another machine until he had been defeated, unveiled a new robot forged in silence. Its form was foreign, its presence heavy, as though something unnatural slept within its frame. The sight struck Raku like a blow. The vow had already been broken. The moment did not remain hidden for long. Other players felt the pull of the encounter, their eyes drawn to the clash that was about to unfold. Murmurs turned to shouts as crowds gathered, the tension spreading like fire through dry grass. The appearance of Rust's new machine shattered any illusion of peace Raku might have hoped for. Though he had thought to withdraw quietly, the lure of a formidable rival rekindled his fighting spirit. His machine moved forward, driven by instinct rather than choice. The battle began once again, metal colliding with metal beneath the roar of the gathering crowd. Later, when the fight was done, Raku withdrew from the game. The turmoil within him had eased, and though exhaustion pressed on his body, his spirit felt sharpened. He closed his eyes and allowed himself the calm of sleep, unaware of the shifting currents awaiting him elsewhere. Far away, in the world of Shangri-La Frontier, Emul sat alone, restless and heavy, with longing for Raku's return. His solitude was broken by the approach of Seru, elder brother of Ul, a samurai whose presence commanded silence. The air seemed to change with his arrival, lifting Emul's mood. Seru's purpose, however, was not casual. He sought something or someone hidden, even from Emul's knowledge. He spoke of a remarkable encounter near Sieg, a place bound to the Golden Dragon King. And with that memory came a shadowed figure. At Seru's call, a masked stranger emerged from obscurity. The man's steps were deliberate, his aura carrying the weight of mystery. When, at last, the mask was lifted, a new name entered the world of Emul Katsu. The revelation marked the beginning of yet another secret thread, in the end, less weave of Shangri-La Frontier.